Ex-police dog is barking his head off against a tree, and what his owner finds inside will shock you. When the family first spotted Kyle, a former police dog, they immediately fell in love with him. Kyle had spent 8 years as a police dog and had just retired, and he was ready to live his cool new life with his new family. They often took him into the woods near their home, and Kyle loved hunting squirrels, even if he never managed to catch them. But there was one thing that caught his eye. It was like any other normal day when Kyle was out walking in the woods, until the Smith family's father noticed that there was something wrong with him. Indeed, Kyle stood in front of a particular tree and started barking at it. The father called out to Kyle, who wasn't listening, even though he's usually a very obedient dog. He continued to bark frantically at the tree. The next day, the same thing happened in front of that tree, with Kyle barking at the top of his lung. And his new master really wanted to know what was inside that tree. So he brought in a chainsaw and cut it in half. Inside, he found a small capsule. Inside the capsule was a letter and a medal. The letter revealed that the tree contained the ashes of the dog's former owner. A police officer had died in the line of duty, and the medal bore his name. Tears filled the owner's eyes as he realized that his faithful companion Kyle had been searching for years. He had found this lost object of his departed friend, and that he could finally mourn him. His parents left him alone with the family dogs. When they returned, they were completely shocked. Imagine the scene: a quiet bungalow in the suburbs, a spotless garden, a swing set, and the whole shebang. The DuPont family was the model family of the neighborhood. But there was one thing that stood out from this perfect picture: their Rottweiler, Brutus, a monster of muscle, teeth, and black hair. You should have seen the neighbors' faces when they came across him on the evening walk. But for Leo, barely 12 months old, Brutus was his hero. When the little one got down on all fours, the dog would follow, protective, bright-eyed. These two shared everything: naps, games, and even secret stewed fruit snacks. One day, the parents, caught up in the heat of the moment with the vacuum cleaner heating up and the phone ringing off the hook, left Leo and Brutus alone in the living room. Time to sort out a few things. No more than 5 minutes, I promise. Except that as soon as the garden door slams shut, a low, powerful bark rattles the windows. Adrenaline is pumping, the parents' hearts are pounding. They rush inside, imagining every possible and unimaginable disaster scenario. The DuPonts open the living room door with palpable apprehension, and then total astonishment. Leo is sitting on the floor, surrounded by scattered cookies. Brutus, meanwhile, is standing a few inches away, looking worried and barking frantically. Leo has a crumb stuck in his throat. Tears are welling up in the boy's eyes, his face red and flushed. Leo's mother reacted in a split second. With gestures she'd learned in a first aid course, she managed to dislodge the treacherous crumb. Leo takes a deep breath, tears giving way to a big smile. Brutus, the day's savior, tenderly licks Leo's cheek in relief. Leo, meanwhile, is still in a state of shock, realizing just how bad the situation could have become without the intervention of their faithful Rottweiler. The neighbors, alerted by the commotion, crowd around the house. Rumors fly, and within an hour the whole neighborhood knows that Brutus has gone from beast to guardian angel. At dinner that evening, Leo receives a double portion of dessert, while Brutus is treated to a whole steak. The DuPonts realize how lucky they've been, and the crucial role Brutus has played. The bond between Leo and Brutus is stronger than ever, a true lesson in trust and unconditional love. This dog didn't want to let go of this woman, and it revealed the secret she was hiding from her husband. George and Chloe had just moved into a new house when they received a call from a friend of George asking him to keep his dog for a few days because he was going on a business trip. But it wasn't just any dog, it was Rex, a gigantic former police dog. But Chloe, who didn't like dogs, showed herself very reluctant. She made up stories, but in the end she accepted the dog in the house, but didn't know what to expect. At first, everything was calm. Chloe even liked Rex. But George's friend called to say that the trip was unexpected and that Rex had to stay at his place for at least 1 more month. And that's when things started to go wrong. Indeed, after a while, every time Chloe came home from work, Rex would get mad at her. He sniffed her, jumped on her, and even sometimes grunted. But it was in a very weird and obsessive way, different from the one where the dog is happy to find its owner. George then started to think that Rex was doing this because there was a dog smell on his wife, and that Rex was very excited about it. But at the same time, he started to link the dots because Chloe couldn't find a dog from work to home. And even if she found one from time to time in the street, it wouldn't be every day. and when George asked her, she always found a lame excuse. So to solve this problem, he decided to install a hidden camera in Chloe's car. So even after putting a camera in the woman's car, George decided to follow her the next day after work to find out what she was doing. The next day, he followed his wife after work, and he immediately noticed that she was not going home. At some point, she parked the car and a strange man came in, and he was welcomed with much more affection than he should have been for a married woman, if you know what I mean. At that moment, George realized that he had been betrayed. But things didn't make him complain because he decided to listen to the conversation thanks to the camera he had installed in the car. In this conversation, he could hear the plan of the two lovers to poison George. In fact, every time the two lovers met, Chloe took a little bit of poison she put in George's food to simulate a natural death, because she put it little by little until he died slowly, and they could live together until the end of their days with George's money. Obviously, George immediately called the police. He took all the images and recordings he had, and they were both arrested. And the poison vial was found in the lover's house. All this was discovered, and George's life was saved thanks to Rex's reaction, who immediately felt the poison and identified it as a threat. This woman died alone at home with her dog, but you won't believe what the dog did to her. Anna, an 85-year-old woman who had just lost her husband, was now living by herself in a small apartment in Washington. She never wanted to go to a nursing home because she couldn't keep her dog with her there. She lived alone with her dog, and the only support she received was from her son, Jeremy, who visited her every weekend for coffee. On a Monday, after returning from the supermarket with groceries, she felt a sharp pain in her left breast. Initially, she thought it was just a common cold, but it worsened. While attempting to make tea, the pain in her breast brought her to her knees, and she had a heart attack. Unfortunately, she couldn't call for help and passed away in her room alone with her dog. No one knew what had happened to her because her son only visited on weekends, and during this time, nobody cared for the dog. 2 days later, unable to reach his mother by phone, her son decided to visit her earlier on Friday. Concerned about his mother, he entered the apartment, and what he saw left him absolutely shocked. Upon entering, he discovered the dog had destroyed the entire apartment, even breaking down the kitchen door as if trying to seek help. What surprised everyone was that the dog did not feed on the owner since he had been without food for days. Instead, as later revealed by one of the cameras she had in her apartment, he only licked her wounds from the fall and lay next to her, whining and trying to get help the entire time. Selena was a 30-year-old mother who'd had her license since she was 18. She'd never had an accident, and she'd never made any waves since she still had all her points on her license. As the young woman sat in her car one day, driving to school to pick up her 2 sons, she heard sirens behind her. She was terrified because she knew it was the police, yet she didn't know what they were up to. She then stopped, and a policeman got out of the car and asked for her license and registration. The policeman then asked her if she knew her taillights were out. Selena responded, her voice tinged with a hint of resignation, acknowledging that she was indeed aware of the issue. However, she explained, the cost of the necessary repair was steep, amounting to a daunting $600, a sum she was apprehensive about affording. Sensing a shift in the conversation, the policeman then requested her to open her car's trunk. At this unexpected turn of events, Selena's heart raced with anxiety, a mix of fear and uncertainty clouding her thoughts as she reluctantly complied with the officer's instruction. The young woman began to record the policeman on the sly and noticed that something was wrong. The policeman asked her a lot of questions, like why she hadn't fixed her tail light when she'd already told him it was too expensive, that it cost $600. He was also quite oppressive with her, asking questions like why she didn't have enough money to get her lights fixed. This really embarrassed her, and then she was shocked when she noticed that the policeman was actually trying to fix her tail lights. She was taken aback by the unexpected kindness displayed by the policeman. After he empathetically expressed his opinion that the repair cost seemed excessively high, she felt a wave of relief wash over her. Grateful for his understanding and the gentle manner in which he handled the situation, she finally mustered the words to thank him sincerely. With a heart lighter than when she had arrived, she then departed, carrying with her the memory of this unexpected encounter. Policeman refuses to move the car, blocking the ambulance, then immediately regrets his action. There was a huge accident when two cars crashed into each other. The police and an ambulance quickly arrived on the scene, but while his partner was already placing the injured into the ambulance, Tony the paramedic ran up to the police sergeant on the scene and asked him to move his car. The cop then took one look at the ambulance driver and, after giving him the cold shoulder, simply turned on his heel. Tony was so surprised that he even took a step back. Was this police sergeant really going to leave an ambulance stranded for no apparent reason? Tony then continued to get impatient and told him that he really needed to move his police car that was blocking the ambulance so he could get to the emergency room. Because on top of that, he had just loaded everyone into the ambulance now. So he asked him again to move his car, but still nothing. Tony wasn't a fighter by nature and didn't want to get into direct conflict with the policeman, who seemed totally out of touch with reality. So Tony then had to make a big decision, and what he did to move the policeman's car will shock you. He called the station directly, explaining the situation. Then the policeman's superior showed up and yelled at him in front of everyone. He put him to the shame of his life and ordered him to move the car, which he then did. Shortly afterwards, Tony learned that this policeman was in fact a dirty cop, and that he'd been doing this for now several weeks, and that this was the last straw. He was then fired.